Out of wonk? What the fuck am I talking about? I tell you what, as I've got older, I've definitely put on weight, but I have a cracking set of boobs.
I love that the button was pressed just as that was said. This is the moments we live for. Welcome everyone to the Boobcast F1 podcast. My name is Hlkenberg, and alongside me is our taco friend extraordinaire,
Esther Boobs.
Esther Boob Gutierrez.
Yeah.
How you doing, mate?
I'm doing all right. I may have an estrogen imbalance, but I'm doing all right. In the grand tradition of the show, as we have learned, if nothing else, he who is drunkest shall be first, and he who is sober shall be last. And because today's my last day before my birthday, it is my birthday tomorrow, alas, I'm going to celebrate. However, because you and I are old now, we have to be a little classier, show some decorum. So what you will see is I have a bottle of champagne. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't have a cork, so I can't pop it for you. But let me... Fucking hell, I am old. I can't even open a bottle now.
So don't pull it too hard, otherwise you'll shit out your...
There we go. Ooh, that does smell like a classy beverage for a classy gentleman. Unfortunately, I'm northern and don't own any champagne flutes, so I will be drinking my champagne, my victory champagne, hopefully, from this Thwaites Lancaster Bomber pint glass that I nicked from a pub.
Amazing.
What, Ambassador? Right.
I hear the bubbles.
Yeah, it's a bubbly good time. That's a pint with quite a lot of head on it. Oh.
Nothing wrong with a bit of head.
Nothing wrong with a bit of head. Ooh, misses. Cheers.
Just turn myself up. Cheers, everyone. I just realised my microphone was down really low. Sorry about that, everyone.
Oh.
Chin. Are you doing anything special for the birthday?
No, that's the beauty of it. The plan is genius, right? Instead of doing all the adult grown-up stuff that I do every day, working, laundry, putting on my trousers, that can get to fuck. And I'm going to spend the whole day eating beef jerky in my underpants and playing video games. It's going to be magnifique.
Sounds amazing. Yes.
So we're in Baku, which we both have a bit of a love-hate relationship with. As we were talking about before we went live, let me change my camera so you can see my fat face. Ooh. The PlayStation doesn't give you a flattering array of camera angles, really. As we were talking about before we went live, you and I have a bit of a crash-happy history here, to the point that one year... I still can't remember which one of us it was. One of us crashed out, and as the other one was laughing at him, they also crashed. So it could also be one of those days. And I've also, if you remember the year before last, I very nearly won here on merit, and then binned it about 3 laps from the end.
I remember that one, yeah.
And all the comments were like, "You arsehole, I can't believe it." And well-deserved those insults were. Now, obviously it's an F1 podcast and whatnot, but there is something I would very much like to talk about before we go any further. Something I think everyone should be aware of. A little dicky bird tells me that you have a radio station, sir.
Ah, yes, I do. It is now 2 weeks in existence.
Ooh.
It's called Higher Plane Music Radio. You can find it at higherplanemusic.com/radio. And it's essentially... so that website highlights loads and loads of independent and unsigned artists, normally rock, electronica, angry women with pianos, and a few bits of computer game music. So it's all kind of like a massive jumble of that, kind of split into a couple of hours of different types of music. So yeah, runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Currently, you have to be in the UK officially to listen to it.
Boo.
But there are plenty of ways to get around that. So hashtag VPN, or use things like TuneIn and Streamer and things like that, and actually it doesn't take any notice of legal boundaries, and it just lets everyone in the world listen anyway.
The views of Mr. Smith do not necessarily align with the views of the FailcastF1 podcast and its sponsors and subsidiaries.
I just noticed the race is starting as wet, and then we'll go dry.
Oh, so, motherfucker.
I think I'm going to stick with my setup anyway, because my setup is bigger rear wing than front wing for once. So.
I'm already scared. Normally I feel very comfortable at this track, considering it's a narrow street circuit of doom, despair and misery, but I'm feeling very, very unsettled. And I think it's because I know how likely it is that I'll bin it, that I'm trying my best not to bin it, and it's going to make me more likely to bin it.
More champagne bubbles for you.
It's a bin off. Right, anyway, with the birthday formalities out of the way,
yes.
We have much stuff to discuss. And I'd like to begin as the financial administrators probably will in a few years over at Williams. With one Mr. Robert Kubica and his angry mob of insane Polish fans announcing that they will leave Williams. The interesting point was that it was a point that was repeated many times in every interview, in every article about it. It's his decision, it's my decision, I'm walking away. It's definitely nothing to do with the fact that I have been lapped by my own teammate at 50% of the races this year, nor that I am often 2 seconds a lap off his pace. It's definitely nothing to do with that. I just don't like Williams. I imagine Williams were okay with that on the basis that he wouldn't, I don't know, maybe stir up his fans against them and have Grove firebombed or something. But it definitely hit me as a jumping before he was pushed kind of scenario.
Absolutely.
I just got distracted there by Lando Norris going fastest and me thinking, doesn't he drive for Haas? Because in my career mode, he does drive for Haas. And I was thinking, what's he doing on pole? Now, the other rumour, of course, is that he is in talks now with Audi about a seat in the DTM. Kind of surprising, but it could work quite nicely, that, couldn't it, really?
I think that would work quite nicely, because I think that the main issue is, I think, like, technically wise, like, he knows how to drive a car fast. And when you consider injury-wise and then having to relearn, like, in your 30s, going from being right-handed to left-handed, and then having to, like, do anything at vaguely the same percentage of goodness, is going to take a long time. But in theory, like, how to drive and all of that kind of stuff is still there. What is not there for me is the extreme precision required for an open wheel, fast, single-seater, top-tier drive.
No.
So I could see him doing very well in a touring car, in a GT car potentially, but I'd much rather have him in a touring car level, because with that it's about having the hustle bustle to sling the car around, and having grit and determination and good wheel-to-wheel combat, which I think he actually still does, because he normally makes up a fair few places on the opening lap, and then spends the first kind of 5 or 10 laps dropping back to last again before being dropped by the rest of the field. So there's some stuff that he's still clearly quite good at, but it's just not F1 related level for me. I agree. I mean, obviously it's triggered a lot of conversation, right? People saying, well, should he have come back or anything? Like, I still say yes, it was
Oh, there's a yellow flag. Oh, it was me that triggered it.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I've just finished doing the yellow flag.
It's because I slowed down too much coming into the pits, and I crossed the white line, which is naughty, but no one seemed to care.
No, Charlie.
Yeah. R.I.P. Charlie. No, I still think it was a spectacular achievement to come back at all. I just don't think he should have done it. And the way everyone's... See, I can't tell if people are genuinely shocked or are just pretending to appear sympathetic and pro-Robert, but the amount of people going, well, no one expected him to do this badly. And it's like, anyone with 2 brain cells to rub together would have expected him to do this badly.
Exactly. And I know you're not a fan of Martin Brundle, but he did say in the qualifying session, and he's really the first one to kind of say it actually, and I was like, oh good. And he said I've got 3 opinions on it. One, it's an amazing achievement, and I'm really glad that he was able to do it. It's as much to prove to himself and to like raise awareness and all of that stuff. It's really great. 2, very sad that it didn't work out with Williams and so on and so forth. But 3, I'm actually quite relieved that he's stopping now, because it's like ruining what we thought of him beforehand. And I thought that was quite interesting, because it's a bit like how people sometimes do the Schumacher return as well, was actually it starts to damage the legacy of the thingy bob. Because he said, look, we'd all left it as the champion that we never had, and now he's come back, and now we've kind of like, oh, well, he's done really well, but that's a bit sorry as well.
Well, that's what I've been saying all along.
Yeah.
He could never have done anything positive to his legacy by coming back to F1. The only positive again is that, you know, he's shown that technically he could do it, but, and I'm going to have to pick my words very carefully here because I don't want to give the wrong impression, but I can't even say he came back on merit.
Well, no, because he had to find a sponsorship package, which I know a lot of drivers need to do, but...
No, but also, I felt he was put back in because there was a team that probably had a pretty good inkling it was going to be dead last, that was under immense pressure from his fans. I mean, I don't think Williams really wanted to put him in the car, because the year before, he lost out to Sorokin. And Sorokin roundly trounced him in Renault's test programme. So I think they kind of put him in almost because, well, as damage limitation. And had Williams been in better shape or had closer ties to Mercedes, I don't think he would have gotten his chance.
Same.
So, I mean, it's kind of, yeah, it is a great achievement that he came back. But I think we should accept that he kind of received some leg up, purely because it makes a feel-good story. And he... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I actually thought he was going to get dropped before the end of the year, to be honest. And I just think Williams were bricking themselves about how to announce it.
Yeah, I suspected that Latifi would, because he's gone a bit off the boil in F2, and is not really looking like he's going to overhaul De Vries in the F2 Championship, which has been a bizarre series this year, because it feels like all the new people that have come in have got quite a lot more than half of the field that were kind of there before. And Latifi, it's his 6th year in F2. He should be fighting for the championship. He's not, but he's going to be Stroll 2 and get Daddy to invest. And so I thought he'd be in replacing Kubica at the end of the year. And what Kubica has also said in his messages is how difficult it has been, and that he had underestimated, I think, the toll of doing all of these races back to back and so on and so forth, and going from 0 to full campaign, I think has not helped. And with DTM being shorter campaign, shorter races, less of a hustle bustle with the car, I think that would suit him potentially. And you look at Nicholas Hamilton, I guess, in BTCC, he's done some decent results with a back of the grid team, and so I think it shows that people with a disability can get on and perform well at that level in that series?
Alex Zanardi.
Yep.
He's been a champion in multiple classes, and he's got no legs.
Exactly.
I don't think disability is necessarily a handicap in motorsport, but I think it is in Formula One.
Or that type of disability, I guess. Because I'd imagine also that, not that I wish that Kubica had lost his arm completely, but if you had a human with robotic arms driving against humans with instinct, whilst technically you may have the technical precision to be like, I can robotically and mechanically have my arm and do X, Y, and Z, you lack the feeling and the intuition and the human instinct for having your hands on the wheel and doing the stuff that a robot cannot simulate, I guess. And so I would always assume that a robotic arm would not be as good in a racing situation, even though technically it may understand things better.
That's my problem with Robo-Race. No, it really is. I don't think a robot will have a gut. Either it will have an artificial guts or glory attitude that will eventually be dialed out of it because it's too expensive, or it will know its parameters so well that it won't go for sort of those risky overtakes. And I don't know how they're going to program these cars to attack and defend in a way that is entertaining to watch and keeps the people paying for these very expensive robot cars happy. I think it's a bit daft. Anyway, getting off the topic a little bit. So, I mean, of course, I wish Robert Kubica well. I do wonder how financially impactful it's going to be for Williams. I wonder if Orlan will stay around, because they're like they've become sort of the number 2 sponsor for them. However, I still think it's the right way to go. Whether Latifi gets the seat or not, I'm for Williams, because I actually think with how the car this season, they might just be able to get themselves off the back next year.
Yeah, I mean, I was really encouraged, although it didn't quite transpire in qualifying. George Russell was 15th in FP3 this morning, and I was like, where did that come from? And he was ahead of the Haas's and a Force India, and I was thinking, scratchy chin, you're actually knocking on the doors of the rest of the field now. Wasn't far off in quali, but wasn't 15th before getting through to Q2.
I tell you what,
there's signals of a fluke there, isn't there?
Yeah, I tell you what, he's dragged some performances out of that car that should be far more commented upon than they have been.
Yeah.
I think the only person who gives him credit really is Will Buxton, who makes a point in Paddock Pass to point out when George has performed strongly. Because it kind of goes uncommented upon. I mean, you don't really see the Williams on TV, actually. Which, you know, that kind of goes against the ethos that Channel 4 brought in when they took over the UK coverage, which was, we're going to try and show you all the teams. But I think this year I've mostly seen Red Bulls, Renaults, Mercedes and Ferraris. Because like even McLaren have been performing really strongly, but I can't remember many situations where the camera has followed a McLaren for a few laps. I mean, I think maybe there was some more coverage of Lando Norris at the start, but because McLaren seem to be in their own, the sort of no man's land, you don't see them. Because they're always sort of 4th, 5th or 6th, but, you know, 10 seconds behind the cars in front, 10 seconds in front of the cars behind, and just cruising. But still, all credit to George Russell. I think he seems quite happy at Williams. I'm impressed by how patient and cool-headed he's remained in what must be a very frustrating set of circumstances. And I think that sort of quiet confidence has done him favours, and I don't think his career will be damaged by being at Williams, which, you know, could have gone either way, to be honest. You know, flip a coin and it could have been interpreted very differently. It almost seems to blow with the wind, that kind of thing. Be interested to see what happens with Ocon at Renault in that regard.
I find that fascinating, because that will be a sink or swim, I think, for Ocon, because Danny Rick will have none of his inter-team rivalry that came out with Perez, and Ocon needs to, as you were saying with Russell, you've got the temperament and the patience to kind of pull something out of the bag and work with the team to get there. Ocon needs to make sure that he can temper his enthusiasm of being a year on the sidelines hungry, and then coming out and overdriving, over-demanding. I don't want to say prima donna-ing, because I think he might be a nicer guy than that.
He's a very nice guy.
In there. Yeah, there's a hint in there where I think, I know you want it that badly, but just don't, like, use that as a positive, not as a force of pushing people away. In the pursuit of something.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say actually how it's going to go with him and Danny Rick as teammates. But you're right. I mean, Ricciardo generally doesn't rise to the bait of his teammates. But then again, I'm not even sure Ocon really wanted to get into a fight with Perez, really. I think it kind of happened organically just because they were both getting roughly the same out of the same car, which meant they were trying to occupy the same stretch of track very often. I guess, there's something to be said for having a clear 1-2 standing within a team, because your cars should be running near each other, but not so near that they're tripping over each other. And part of me thinks that's why they chose to keep Bottas at Mercedes. Because if for any reason Lewis doesn't make the finish, there's a pretty good chance Bottas can pick up the pieces. You know what I mean? He's sort of... Yeah. Because I'll be honest with you, I really did think it was time's up for Bottas. I thought that Mercedes were getting a bit edgy about their rivals having young prospects like Verstappen and Leclerc, and they had an old geezer and a getting there geezer. And it's almost as if Mercedes have become the new Ferrari. They don't really do the young driver thing. And it did cross my mind that Ocon is a big talent. I'm confident enough to say that much. And it made me wonder if they were sort of thinking maybe it's time to bring in some fresh blood, actually, because Lewis won't be around forever. And Bottas has shown in the years we've given him that maybe he's just not going to get to the same level.
No, and I don't think he will. And although I do like Bottas, but no. I guess what they need to be also really, really... Oh, that wasn't what I meant to do. I was too busy changing my fuel thing and forgetting to turn out of the pits and just belly flopped over the massive curve. Graceful. The thing that I think Mercedes need to be really careful of is that they've got Ocon and Russell as their talents. What they need to be able to do, in my mind, unless they want to do a clean sweep, is to phase them in so that they don't have two new drivers coming into the team at exactly the same time, and they've spent years building and working in a way that suits two drivers on their way out together. So, because if you've got Hamilton maybe going at the end of 2021, 22 maybe, Bottas for me, Bottas would be going at the end of next year to bring in Ocon or Russell, whichever one they want to go for first. Then when Hamilton decides that he either wants to retire or go to Ferrari, then he can choose that, and then they bring in the second one, because they don't have anyone else really Mercedes-wise that are there, because I can't remember if Nick de Vries was actually tied to Mercedes or not, but he's decided that he's off to Formula E now, so he doesn't really count. And I don't know of anyone else in the Mercedes drive program that is coming through affiliated anywhere to them at all.
No, that's true, actually. while we're on Formula E, actually, I was surprised to read that apparently Lewis Hamilton has told Toto Wolff that after F1 he wants to go to Formula E.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Or at least he said he wouldn't be averse to it, which I think is a sort of... I mean, that would take Formula E to a different level, wouldn't it, really? In terms of popularity. Having a big name like that.
Yeah.
Moving over. But also, I don't know if you saw it, the front page of Autosport.com, I think about Wednesday, the two headline stories were Hamilton, and a quote from him saying, I think I'd be able to be, paraphrasing, I'd be okay with retiring having not been a Ferrari driver, but of course every driver wants to drive for Ferrari. And then the next story was Toto Wolff, Vettel's far from finished. And I was thinking to myself, oh my god, just kiss already. It's one of the few occasions where I looked at that and said, do you know what, a straight swap would actually be really good for everybody involved. I really do think it would be. I think Vettel at Mercedes would be such an excellent fit that it's untrue. Hamilton to Ferrari to partner Leclerc, that would be fireworks all along. I'd actually really like to see that, but I guess it won't happen. I get the feeling it won't happen. Although I do get the sort of feeling from Lewis that he does kind of regret that he's never been in red.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I do agree with that.
Because it's like the last big achievement in F1. Once he's equalled Schumacher, it's the only big honour he hasn't done, because he's already driven for McLaren.
Yeah.
Driving for Williams isn't the honour it used to be.
Right.
So it's Ferrari really that, the one big one he hasn't done is win for Ferrari at Monza. And he's such an achievement hunter that it does make me think that maybe next year, new formula in 2021. Because you and I have said all along, he'll stick around till 2020 so he can equal Schumacher. But I wonder if he takes a punt on Ferrari for 2021.
That'd be interesting.
I really could see that, to be honest. But to be honest, I also think that Leclerc would hand him his ass by then.
I don't know. I think this is also where it's quite difficult to... I don't know. I do think those are the top... Two of the top three, with Verstappen in there as well, as the three that are head and shoulders above the rest at the moment.
Well, I mean, the laws of ageing dictate that Hamilton will be about his peak at the moment and will start to come down the other side. Think Nigel Mansell to McLaren. Whereas Charles should be technically getting faster and faster. And I don't know, I think there's something about Charles Leclerc that I think Lewis Hamilton wasn't quite prepared for somehow.
I do like the fact that Monza is set up like this huge rivalry to come, because he wasn't happy with any of that. And I think Leclerc is the man who could do the emotional rattling that Rosberg could do to Hamilton.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
I don't see Vettel being able to do it, because Vettel would break first.
Yeah, I think you're right. No, I think Charles has he has the right attitude to be a truly great driver, and I think he's better at keeping his head. And you're right, I think he could unsettle Hamilton in the way that Rosberg used to, which was perhaps Rosberg's greatest talent. I think it almost certainly won him his championship. I mean, he's definitely got under Sebastian Vettel's skin.
Yeah.
no end, and I don't see that being a situation that gets any better. And the question is, how Ferrari are going to handle that? And interestingly, it seems like the favour is moving along the other side of the garage. Now, I know, who was it who was speaking? It may have been Hamilton, or it may have been Rosberg, actually, but someone said, well, no, it was Ricciardo. One more good race for Vettel and it'll all be forgotten about. I'm not sure that's necessarily true.
I don't think so, either.
Because, being quite honest, Renault have fired Hlkenberg for less.
Yes, very true.
Because, already at the start of the season, Cyril Abiteboul was pretty clear, actually, that he wasn't happy with Nico Hlkenberg. And this is a guy rated as, by most people, one of the top 5 or 6 drivers in Formula 1. A guy who has outdriven the car in many cases in his time at Renault. He had a flawless first season at Renault.
Yep.
And the mistakes he's made, and I'm not saying he hasn't made any, have definitely been less severe and less frequent than the ones Vettel has been making. And Ferrari do tend to be a bit of an ocean tanker in this regard. It takes them a long time to make a change. Which can be a good thing, right? Because no one wants drivers being fired like they are at Red Bull,
No.
You sneeze over the breakfast bar and you get fired there. So I honestly don't know for sure, but I get the feeling that the tide is shifting, if it hasn't already. And the only thing I know from qualifying today is that Leclerc pulled it out of the bag again.
Yes.
And
it was a mega lap by Vettel, and Vettel was going for better and made a mistake, and Leclerc didn't.
Yeah.
And that's basically what decided who was going to get pole in that regard.
I mean, he's just able to get on and deliver. And what I find particularly interesting about the whole thing as well is thinking about, if we go back to Bahrain and replay that exactly as it happened, but swap Leclerc and Vettel around, I don't know if Vettel would have been able to come back from that in the same way Leclerc did. That said, the fact that it sounds like he was in the mix for pole here maybe speaks against that, because he had such a terrible race in Monza, one of his worst in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
And how he's not got a ban already, I don't know, to be honest.
Well, he's a couple of points off it, isn't he? So, because I was looking at the penalty points, and he needs to basically not get anything else until I think it's Mexico, and then he gets some points removed. But yeah, it's not grand. Can I just confirm? Did you do your pole time on mediums?
No.
Okay.
No, I did it on softs.
Okay, I was going to extra cry.
I wanted to go out on mediums, but I thought, maybe I'll save it until the track's a bit faster. But I don't think I will match my time on the mediums, so there's no point going out again. Interesting thing though, Hamilton's just beaten me in sector 2, so the gap's down to about half a second. Even more interesting though is the Perez out-qualifying Charles Leclerc at the moment. No, there was something else I meant to say there. I noticed something. Let me flick through the menus again. What was it I noticed that jumped out at me? Nah, it's gone. It's gone. Never mind. Back on topic. So, yeah, my sincere hope is that we see out the season now with Leclerc being the cat amongst the pigeons, and Ferrari finding their feet again, because I kind of want Leclerc to have a run on the title before Verstappen. I can't help it.
Yeah.
And I just I don't believe it's mathematically possible for Leclerc to make a run on the title now, but God, it would be good. And I actually predicted he would get a chance at the title in his first year at Ferrari, but apparently I was wrong there. But they had so many reliability problems, it's not entirely his fault. And I think he's extracted the most out of the car at most Grand Prix. He's certainly been a more consistent driver than Vettel has been.
No.
Sorry, go on.
I can't remember what I was going to say. Yeah, don't worry, it's gone out of my brain now. It was something that was related to... that was it. I was going to springboard onto the where we mentioned Hlkenberg and the Vettel and all of that stuff. I was going to springboard onto the rumour that I heard this morning.
Yes, please.
Whilst it all dived in. So the rumour that I heard this morning, and this is coming from an employee of a certain American team that we expect to not be in Formula One very shortly, and it was that the reason why Hlkenberg did not... Well, there was two reasons why Hlkenberg didn't go to Haas. One was Hlkenberg's salary demand was horrific. The other one was that Ferrari also said, don't touch him because we may need him. And the reason for this is that Vettel has a performance clause in his Ferrari contract, which is where he can look to leave, and he may be returning back to Red Bull, where Kvyat has been signed up for Toro Rosso and will not be getting that drive. And so Haas were not allowed to sign Hlkenberg because Ferrari may want him should Vettel pull out this clause.
See, I love that rumour. But it does make me wonder if they're going to shoehorn him into the Alpha seat. Because I've heard two rumours on this as well. We're hearing a lot of rumours lately. So as you know, I'm in a Swiss German language Sauber group, and there are some insiders in there as well. And they told me 2 weeks ago, well, they didn't tell me directly, but it came up in the conversation, that Antonio Giovinazzi had received a contract.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't official yet. But the fact that it's still not official after his great drive in Monza makes me wonder if that rumour was just rumour. Because the other rumour is that there is Ferrari interest in Hlkenberg, and that they may well... They're weighing up the idea of putting him in at Alpha and taking Giovinazzi back as a tester. But there are two very strong camps in Maranello on this, because there's a part of Ferrari that really wants Antonio Giovinazzi to improve and to be the Italian driver that they've long wanted. Now, you and I are both sceptical that's possible, but the team have come out and publicly defended him. However, there's the other part of them, the part that probably looks at Alfa Romeo's sales record, who view Hlkenberg as Ferrari material, potentially, when a seat opens up there. And then, of course, there's Sauber themselves, who still run Alfa Romeo. It's just called Alfa Romeo, but the car is still built by Sauber. And apparently, Sauber look at the potential of the car and the points disparity between Raikkonen and Giovinazzi, and are quite rightly pointing out that they could be fighting for fifth in the constructors if they had two comparable drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a quite high potential that regardless of what Vettel does, Alfa Romeo Sauber end up picking up Hlkenberg as a safe pair of hands to get the team back into the higher paying positions in the Constructors' Championship. And the question is whether the Giovinazzi lovers get their way. Because if you look at the comments that come out about Giovinazzi, both from Sauber and from Ferrari, they do have a tendency to contradict themselves a little bit. So, you know, they do point out the points disparity at Sauber and that they're not happy with that. But then they also make a point of saying, well, he's come along so much in the last few races and he's going from strength to strength, which you could argue there's some truth to that. But I just don't know whether it's enough.
I think what's interesting with Alpha at the minute, and Chimpy just put in the chat actually, Leclerc can still win mathematically by 80 points. So
is that with Hamilton DNFing though?
It must be, with a significant amount of DNFs, I'd imagine. The thing with Alpha for me is that they have an inability to be able to run two cars at one Grand Prix at the same time. And when they do, that's when they're not competitive. And this harks back to the Sauber days of the 90s to me. And you know Esteban and me with 90s F1. So, like, as Giovinazzi has done well, Raikkonen is busy finding all of the barriers. When Raikkonen is scoring massive points, they're giving Giovinazzi the most stupidest strategies that he can't hold tyres along for, and then he drops down the field and makes stupid mistakes. And I want to see a bit of an evening out there. I think Giovinazzi has fundamentally the pace to be very, very good. He's just too inconsistent in being able to apply that across a Grand Prix. Because, and I still think he'll be kicking himself from Spa, because dropping it on the last lap was just a foot in mouth moment. So much so that the race chat that I'm in during a F1 race was, with about 3 laps to go, almost everyone just put Gio in the wall, lol, just because we expect it, and we expect a problem, and it takes a while for that to kind of tune out and phase out, and he needs a clear run of starting to re-out-qualify Raikkonen again, because which he did today, but also staying ahead of him on track. You can follow him home in his footsteps, and actually that, I think that would be enough to secure him the thought of Ferrari, so that they can go, oh, you could be a potential number 2 at Ferrari, lol, because that's exactly what Kimi done. Very well, actually, as the seasons grew on. I was more happy with him and his performances as he got older, rather than being trapped there in 2014 and 15 looking very bored and off the pace.
Yeah.
But that team must be hemorrhaging money and costing a lot of fortune, and if Hlkenberg for a couple of £1 million in salary can give them an extra 20 million in constructor standings revenue, with no sales coming through from Alpha, bada bing.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the point, right? The team is actually financially stable again because they received a huge cash injection for the title sponsorship deal, and since they got that, the car's filled up with sponsors, so I believe they're okay. And the Sauber engineering business is, if I recall correctly, profitable. But there's profitable and then there's profitable, and there's a huge difference in the amount of money coming in between 8th in the constructors and 5th in the constructors. And I don't know. I agree with you. Giovinazzi reminds me a little bit of an even more inconsistent Jarno Trulli. Because, you know, when Jarno Trulli was on it, he was really on it. Whereas when Giovinazzi's on it, he comes home 9th without binning it. And, you know, that's based on, of course, just this season, really. So it may be a bit early to call, but I don't know. There seems to be something about F1. I was having this conversation the other day, actually. There seems to be something about F1 that once you've been in and then gone out again, you can never come back successfully.
No, I suppose.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, Grosjean, I guess, would be about the only one I can remember that's had a gap year. Raikkonen's comeback wasn't the same. Luca Bader. Yeah, it is awkward to be out of the loop. But I guess as well, you then start to fall out of the radar of other people. I tell you, it'll be interesting to see with Ocon then, quite how that goes.
Yeah, that's the big question mark for Ocon for me, actually. Not the driver relationship or anything like that. The two big question marks are: will Renault pull themselves together enough to make his move there turn out to be smart for his career? And can he be one of the one who's been out of F1 and been able to come back with any degree of success? Because it just doesn't happen. I don't know why, but it just doesn't seem to happen. And even the greats couldn't do it. Mansell, Schumacher, it just doesn't happen. Andretti. Of course, when he came back, he was
1993.
Yeah,
that's about the only one I can think of. But then that was in an all-conquering Williams.
Yes. Anywho, so Hlkenberg really has become sort of the key chess piece in the driver market, and for a long time I really did think he was housebound. You made me question that view by pointing out that he and Kevin Magnussen hate each other, which of course is correct. And when I gave it some more thought, I thought, okay, then maybe that doesn't work out. But my nightmare did come true. Romain Grosjean confirmed for at least one more season at Haas.
Yes.
And actually, when they explained their reasoning, I sort of thought, okay, fair enough. Their reasoning being, well, he was the only one to notice that our upgrade packages weren't working, and we didn't believe him. And then when we gave him a chance to prove it, he did prove it, so maybe he's the right guy to help us develop out of this hole. And consistency in drivers is key if you're going to develop your car into a better car. And I sort of thought, okay, fair enough, that makes sense. But there is a part of me that does wonder if he owns some nudie photos of Gunter Steiner covered in whipped cream and has threatened to go to the press with them, and so Gunter's like, okay, you can have the seat, because I guess my dissatisfaction has been replaced by understanding now, but I still don't like the fact that he seems to be getting a pass on several years of really crappy form and such inconsistency, and yet he always manages to scrape through by the skin of his teeth, whereas a driver like Hlkenberg, one of the best, loses out to him, and it's a sort of an inherent sense of injustice to that. But maybe it all comes good. Maybe he gets his shot at the big red machine. It's all to play for, as it were.
Yeah, hopefully. It's the thing for me with go ahead, Vettel. Try to create a gap. Stop slowing down. I guess so. Whilst I completely understand, and actually maybe his technical knowledge is actually what will really, really help. There's a couple of theories that I have, and they're completely unsubstantiated. This is me talking. Absolutely,
that's the best kind of theory.
Exactly. To be fair, this is what 90% of Twitter and 90% of all journalism is these days. Just pure unsubstantiated bollocks.
Exactly.
So, my thought is the team was going in a really good direction, and Grosjean is actually very good technically, knowledge-wise, in able to develop a car. Magnussen came in, was faster, more consistent. Grosjean was busy having a sense of crisis. Haas starts to develop the car around Magnussen, whose technical knowledge is lacking. They come into this year having put their eggs in Magnussen's basket and given Grosjean a bit of a stay of execution to kind of go, come on, you pulled it back together last year, but we need you to really do it this year, and that's why. The car comes out is an absolute turd fest because Magnussen doesn't understand how to develop a car, because he drives the thing by the scruff of the balls and is able to mould a car around his aggressive driving style, which is not necessarily where today's strengths in car driving and development is, or are rather. Grosjean eventually picks up the courage to go, oh no, gets out of the kitchen, decides that actually this car should have been a different way, and then Haas go, oh shit, we should have maybe listened to you a little bit more all along, and starting to develop the car back to how Grosjean thinks a car should develop, because he's more of a sensitive driver and he's able to maximise more of the tyres, which will then make the car much more better performance-wise later on. Because otherwise, if the technical knowledge should have been there from the beginning with Grosjean, then he shouldn't have developed them into this hole to begin with, because he's been there since day one. And then the argument doesn't stand. So that's how I've worked it in my head, if any of that is true. But utter bollocks, who knows?
Well, I mean, if I can offer my spurious and unfounded suggestion into the ring, it also occurs to me that, you know, you and I, particularly I, have had a very strong suspicion that Haas are going to withdraw from the sport. I do wonder if it was very much like fuck it might as well be him because it's going to be our last year. Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe they could get him cheap or something, because the one thing that Rich Energy have said on their Maniac Twitter rampage, which has started again, by the way, if you guys have missed it, like, he's back in the company. I don't know how, but the same guy is back and he's in charge of the Twitter again. And he tweeted yesterday a really sarcastic, we wish Haas all the best as they try and sell themselves to some Saudi investors. I actually believe that's true. Not much that comes out of that man's mouth is true, but I honestly believe that's true. Because everything that Gene Haas has been saying the last few months all sounds like, it's costing too much, I can't win, wah. And that's the sort of thing I thought he'd be saying in the first year, but he lucked out by buying a Ferrari off the shelf.
Yeah.
Hold on. Ooh, bubbles.
Lockout.
Yeah, doing all right.
It'll go backwards because I'm shit at the rain round here, but I will enjoy it whilst it lasts.
Oh God, I'm gonna crash, aren't I? Fuck. Getting up that hill. Getting up the hill at the castle.
Yeah.
How am I going to do that in the wet?
Close your eyes, it'll be fine.
Oh, that's mental. I bet it's full rain as well, isn't it?
It was supposed to dry off 20 minutes in.
Oh, maybe. Oh, that's even worse, because actually I'm better on full wets than inters. I've lost my wet weather groove in this game, like, really badly. I don't know. And I have really bad starts in this game as well. Like, I was told the other day you need to rev like 10.5 to 11,500 revs, which is basically just brushing the throttle. I've tried that, makes no fucking difference. So people are talking out of their arse.
Oh, I just full throttle it.
You full throttle? Doesn't that bog you down and spin everything?
Yes. but at least I know what I'm getting myself in for. It's this isn't good. That's 4 lots of wet and then a dry, a cloudy and a sunshine. So that's good. That's a half and half jobby.
Yeah, it is. I don't think one set of inters is going to make it until the rain actually stops either.
So, not with my tyre wear.
Oh well, fuck it. Let's just crash, shall we, and get this over with.
Hey.
Right, I'm going to take your lead then. I'm just going to fucking floor it and see what happens.
As you spear off into me, we both out before turn 1. I tell you what I also do as well is I turn the ERS deployment down so that it makes me smoother on.
Oh, that was a better start than I've had recently. Oh! God, no, we're racing! No, this wasn't the deal. This wasn't the deal.
Where are you?
You know this podcast doesn't work when we actually race each other. Oh shit! Missed my braking point.
I saw the arrow coming.
Oh, I'm last, but I didn't destroy it.
Yes. Well, I'm going to be a bottle cork because I am not fast, and I can tell I'm not fast because the AI are all over me like a fucking slap around a £50 note. So I definitely don't feel confident around this bloody bit.
The car won't fucking stop. I almost went into the back of Gasly then.
In his Red Bull. Cody's did say that they were trying to get permission to do the swap, actually.
Well, I mean, the swap can happen organically in the game, so I don't see why people would complain. I mean, in my game, Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel are teammates at Renault. Lando Norris went to Haas.
Oh, is it full speed through the... No, it's not. Oh, it's not. Oh, a lily span coming out of that. I'm going to be mullered down the straight. Yep, here they come.
Yeah, I'm being left...
Oh, God.
I'm being left for dead.
It's 3 wide.
I hate this circuit in the wet. I hate it, hate it, hate it, hate it. Someone's in the pits, though.
It's a McLaren signs, because Norris is second.
What position are you?
I'm still in the lead, but I've literally got about 10 cars all behind me. Oh no, Norris is in the lead now. Now I am. Leave me room, Lando.
I'm braking like 50 metres before the point I'm supposed to brake because I'm following other cars, and you just aquaplane into the back of them if you don't. This is not an overtaking friendly track either, is it?
No. Which is just as well, because it's meant that I've been able to stay in the lead. But yeah, if everyone... I can tell that I'm shit because I haven't been able to drop anyone off my train.
I've just got in front of Raikkonen, but it was a scary moment, and if I stood up, the chair would stand up with me.
This isn't good. There's no grip.
No, none. I almost took the end plate off on the corner. There was just no traction at all.
It's that weird greasy where it's just like light rain.
Don't turn on me, Raikkonen, you fuck.
Land no.
Right, I'm going to turn my ERS down.
Someone lost a front wing down at turn 1.
For once, not me. Did I just see that right? Romain Grosjean, fastest man on the track.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, he's running in clean air though, isn't he? And no traffic. Me and Raikkonen have dropped off the back of you because he tried to kill me. the conditions feel like they're getting worse. The track's just getting slippier and slippier.
It's difficult. Has the latest patch then upgraded the rain to drag strip Germany levels of drama?
I don't know, actually, but I mean, in this version of the game, I used to have such a groove for the wet weather, but in this version of the game, I just can't drive in the wet anymore. I'm really annoyed about that first lap mistake. It was because I was watching the back of your car, seeing which side of the track you were moving to, and I totally missed my braking point. Not by much, but in the wet, it's enough, because you lock up and then you just go poof, off into the distance. Fortunately, though, it was a runoff area, so I didn't hit anything. My car's completely intact so far. And I didn't Vettel my way back onto the track and, kill myself or some spectators or anyone else. Okay, so next up is Hlkenberg, who's quite far ahead of me. And he's going to keep getting further ahead at this rate. Tell you what though, my setup seems to be working quite well in the wet, because I can go full throttle through those fast corners.
See, I'm not, and neither's the AI. So that's going to put you in good stead down the straights.
Running an excess of fuel. Mix 3 is there if you need it. Mix 3.
Yeah, you can still do very well in this.
Yeah, I'm not panicking, because once I'm on the dries, I know I'm the fastest man, so the only person in the same ballpark is you. And if I come home second, I'm happy with that. I just don't want you to run away in the points any more than you already have, you little rapscallion.
I won't be running anywhere now.
No, you haven't binned it, have you?
Yeah, fuck my front wing.
No.
I'm going to try and hang it on though.
Well, now might be the good time to get back to the F1 podcast of this podcast.
Yeah, sorry.
No, everyone knows the rules. The first few laps, particularly in the wet and on street circuits, it's just impossible to host a podcast because you're bricking yourself. Misses. Sorry, had to get through the uphill uphill section by the castle into the old town. So, speaking of Haas and these investors, I don't know if the Saudi investor element is true, but I could see them backing out.
Yeah.
They've been making a lot of very strange moves recently. Oh shit! Now I've done my front wing.
Blowing that front wing. It'll need replacement. It takes 2.
Box this lap.
Okay, we can take this up.
Fuck nuts. Shows how bad the car's handling, though. That actually it seems to handle a bit better with only half a front wing. Are you boxing?
No, I've tried to continue on. I've asked Jeff. He says it's going to dry up in 5 minutes.
All right, then I will. Sorry, Jeff, I lied to you.
The gap to the car ahead is 5.17.
But if I can hold everyone up with my shitty wing, then hopefully that means that with both shitty wings we won't drop too far off everyone.
I don't know. I'd already dropped 5 seconds behind Hlkenberg because I ran wide at a corner, and they just disappear. But anyway, they've made a lot of strange moves, like announcing a new livery, which was the same livery with Rich Energy removed from it. And I was like, why even make a press release and photo for that? Like, completely unnecessary.
Yes, indeed.
Now, keeping Romain Grosjean, a lot of people disagree with that, but we have discussed the reasons why you would do that.
Yeah.
Blackmail, nervous breakdown, car development.
Catering.
Yeah, catering. But also, I suppose, actually, Haas isn't much of an attractive place to go at the moment, and there's not, like, drivers... there's not many drivers sort of knocking on the door of the sport that you'd think, okay, it's time now, you know.
No, the only one I would have said would have been Louis Delatraz, actually, because he's now the Haas development driver, but he's had not his finest year, actually, in F2. And I think he would do wise to stay back in F2 for next year to show that actually he's better than what he's shown. Because he's had so many reliability problems when he's done well, and then he's been caught up in loads and loads of crashes. Oh, my DRS has broke.
Your nose?
DRS.
Oh. As long as it's not stuck open.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so I am with you that team is not long for the sport. I don't know who else would take it though, and what would Saudi investors do? Are they going to be the same ones that are invested in McLaren? Would that be too many Saudis in one pot?
Who knows? I don't know what the rules are on that.
2 Saudis, 1 pot. I'm sure there's a video online somewhere.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. Oh, not again. I'm having the race from hell.
You needed more champagne, mate.
Yeah. Last year I won in the British Grand Prix on my birthday. This year I repeatedly bin it. Yeah, it's hard to say. Honestly, I don't see them as a going concern, really. I don't see them as a going concern, to be quite frank with you, because they don't build enough of their own car. If you took them over, you're kind of taking over also the dependency of another team. You have to either keep the relations with Ferrari as they are, or you have to kind of force yourself into a... What the hell is going on? This car will not stop. Are you having trouble slowing down?
No more than normal.
I really am.
I am struggling though, but I can't put it. I think it's also down to the fact I've got an orange half wing. But most of the field would be behind me, ahead of me. Sorry, if this was like not me just blocking everyone.
I'm going to finish last today, I can tell you that much for sure. Because once it comes dry and I come good again, I'm already like half a lap down on everybody, and I've just damaged my wing again. So,
Oh no!
So it's going to be another wing change. Yeah, you're 59.5 seconds ahead of me at the moment. Do you know, I could have won this if it wasn't for the rain. Bugger.
Oh, he's giving me dries.
It's time to come in?
Oh no, he's not. He's giving me more inters. No. No, Jeff.
The game is telling me it's still inters.
Yeah, Jeff got on the phone and said, change your inter strategy. I was like, no. I'm good, mate. Fucking Jeff. Okay.
So, the point I want to cycle back to, if I may, is the idea of Vettel potentially returning to Red Bull. And it's one of those things that I both do and don't believe. No!
Oh no.
Jeff got on the radio to offer me a new strategy, and I, instead of pressing the brake, I pressed the MFD button and realised too late. Oh, goddamn. It's going to take some work to close this gap to you now. But that's fine, because that means I can go on board with you.
Which is good because I'm pitting for dries this lap and I have broken my front wing.
I can see.
A bizarre move where Hamilton was on the inside, I was struggling, went into the wall, and then I think Norris smacked into the back of me, so we're all a bit damaged.
Ah, no, what a mess, eh?
Never mind.
Never mind. I think Cody's do need to come up with a better solution for the MFD, though, because
it's really clunky, isn't it?
You need your thumbs. You need your thumbs. Oh well. Yeah, what were we saying before I binned it? God, I can't even remember what I was talking. Vettel, yeah. I sort of believe it and don't believe it. Yeah, I mean, even now, I'm finding it hard to actually make an argument in either direction. Now I think about it, and I'm wondering what your take is. Do you see it as actually being a realistic possibility, or just complete rumour mongering?
I don't know. I find it. I think he could do with a real good change.
You've got help in the pits behind everyone, haven't you?
Yep. That was delightful.
This game is so... Robert Kubica is your race leader by 13.7 seconds.
Screenshot that, bitches. Oh, that was juicy going on behind. Yeah, I'm very confused over what I think Vettel is. I still think that he is utterly missing his mojo. I still put him on one season max left in the sport.
Yeah.
And the more smug he gets in interviews of like, no, this isn't a thing, and now he's just like all smiley, makes me think he's either say like, fuck off everyone, or fine, I'm going to Red Bull and then you'll see my mojo. Ha 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 ha.
To be honest though, I mean, I don't know why he would go back to be partnered with Max. That's the bit I'm struggling with.
Team.
Yeah. That's the bit I'm really struggling with. And I don't know why Red Bull would take him back.
Yeah.
Because I think Albon and Kvyat at least are definitely capable of being solid number twos.
Yes.
And I'll tie this onto my wish to talk about Alex Albon actually, because obviously he's had only two Grand Prix in the Red Bull, both of which have gone, I would describe as okay. Oh, almost lost it there. Both of which I would describe as having gone okay.
Yeah.
However, not gone as well as I had hoped. There's times he's looked a bit toothless, and he seems to like claw it back at the end of races. So he has like a really conservative start, and then eventually kind of finds his way. And I don't know if that's necessarily good enough for them to say, okay, that's the safe number two we've been looking for, because I think they're a bit more ambitious than that. That said, we've not had a race where they've really gone up against each other, because one of them's always had a penalty.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested what happens in Singapore.
Yes. So in qualifying, it was 8 tenths today was the gap between them. Albon's never been to Singapore, So I expected it to be a little bit worse here. But to me, that is still mildly worrying. Thankfully, though, he's 6th on the grid. And I think if he can sustain that at least, because it really wasn't. I mean, to be fair, he really done Bottas until Bottas improved right at the end. But yeah, it's going to need to be better. And there needs to be a trajectory, I think. I don't think they mind too much if it's like that now, but they need to see inroads. And that was where it wasn't happening for Gasly. There was no inroads.
No,
and what's interesting with that is that he's then gone to Toro Rosso and been bang on it, which I think shows the difficulty of this car.
Well, Alex Albon's been saying the same thing, right? Because did you hear the Beyond the Grid with him?
Yes.
And he was talking about the car, the Red Bull having a very narrow window where it's you're getting the performance out, and that does sound like an Adrian Newey car, to be honest. You know, something that works supremely well, but within a very narrow set of parameters. So I think he's kind of up against it a little bit. Oh, you might do him here. No. The AI are very, very hard to overtake in this version of the game, I find. There you go.
I thought we were going to hit Giovinazzi, actually.
Oh, that was a cheeky move. I tell you what, at least you're giving me something entertaining to watch now I've embarrassed myself.
Oh, bless. It's all good. What was you saying, sorry, before?
Yeah, I mean, the car's got a very narrow operating window, is what he's saying. And I guess he's having a hard time getting the car into that window until later in the race, and maybe only on certain compounds of tyre. But, I mean, 8/10 to Verstappen, a track he's never been at before. I mean, I feel reasonably confident saying that that's probably a better gap than you would have got out of Gasly. Singapore's a bad example because Gasly's quite good at Singapore, but what I'm saying is if you had Gasly at a track he was unfamiliar with, I kind of get the feeling Alex will be closer. If he's not, though, does that vindicate Gasly? Or does it bin both of them?
I'm not sure. And I think what's really key in this as well is that they've then gone back to Toro Rosso and they're both on form with Kvyat, which kind of makes me...
No!
Have you seen how he's like weaved across the track though?
Yeah, I think the AI actually breaks a lot of the sporting regulations pretty regularly in this game. They're very, very aggressive defenders. And they will not back out when you're coming into a corner. Like, you always have to be the one to back out. I've never had them cool off. I don't know why. Is the car still drivable?
Yeah. But it's minorly noticeable, but it's going to be annoying.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to say if this... Does it vindicate Gasly, or like we saw with Alguersuari and Buemi, does it just cast them both into the abyss? Because apparently...
think that's ultimately where it will go.
Because, I mean, ultimately they've already decided that Kvyat can never come back into the big house. He's at the children's table for life. Because why they would already confirm him at Toro Rosso when Albon's still unproven and Gasly, well, just didn't deliver... I mean, that makes no logical sense to me, unless, of course, they know Vettel's coming back.
Yeah.
But again, then why wouldn't you have Albon and Gasly at Toro Rosso? Actually, you know, the more I think about it now, the more it makes me think, actually, Vettel isn't going to Red Bull.
Yeah.
Because
it doesn't make much sense, does it?
No. Plus, if they've already tied one of the seats to Kvyat, then what they're saying is, I presume, either Gasly or Albon will be at Red Bull and the other one will be at Toro Rosso. Because if Vettel came back, does that mean they're keeping Kvyat but binning Gasly, who seems to have found some pace?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Then again, they've got no qualms about summarily firing Kvyat out of nowhere, so who knows?
Maybe they're all in the bin by the end of the year and they'll bring in some old random people.
Hashtag bring back Christian Klein.
He's probably still only about 30.
Yeah, it's really odd talking about him because he wasn't in the sport very long. I want to get nostalgic for a minute if I can, because we missed covering this a few months back. But I want to talk about how weird it was for me watching Damon Hill test Michael Schumacher's Benetton.
Oh yeah, it felt like someone had violated me in a weird way.
Yeah, isn't it really weird? And I don't know, maybe there's older viewers who catch this, but I can't think of another driver-car pairing that would have felt more inappropriate. And by inappropriate, I don't mean like I was offended by it or anything. It's just
weird.
It's just wrong. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
And like, of all the drivers you could have got to test the Benetton, I mean, I was going to suggest Johnny Herbert, who was Schumacher's teammate in that car, as I recall. But he's obviously far too fat to drive that car now, and Damon Hill's still quite svelte. But still, you know, stick in another Benetton name at least. Jean Alesi is still capable of driving.
Yeah, they could have given it to Jos Verstappen.
Yeah, give it to Jos the boss. Give it to Fisichella or Wurtz.
Pop a burger in.
Yeah, flip a burger. Why not? Like, it just didn't make any sense to me. I mean, it was still kind of cool. There was something cool about it, but I had this sort of surreal moment thinking, if you today could speak to you in 94, 95, what would you be saying about that car? Now, I know it wasn't the... most classic F1 cars don't have their original engine because the engines were not designed to be reused in those days. So I suspect, because it didn't have any Ford branding on it, I suspect it's running like a Judd unit.
Was it the 94 one that he was in, or the 95?
I want to say 95, but I could be wrong. It was either 94 or 95. Yeah, but I don't think it was running the original original power unit. Usually it's like a Judd that they stick in classic F1 cars. However, and also you never know how many parts are sort of restoration parts, right? Mm-hmm. I wonder how much of the car is actually original. But still, it must be interesting to drive the car that beat you to the World Championship. Because normally... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I wonder if he can kind of remember back to his original time and be like, so that's where they were faster because this done this versus what R. Williams did at that time. Yeah,
I mean, I never heard anyone ask him anything about it. And I thought that was an opportunity for a really good interview or a piece in Autosport. But no one picked up on it. I'm just really not sure why. The other thing that struck me about all that, by the way, is this. Why, when classic cars get tested, is it always a Lotus, a Williams, a McLaren, a Ferrari or a Benetton? In fact, actually, not even Ferraris that often, come to think of it. Why do we never get treated to, and joining us now is Adrian Suttle in a LaRousse? Why does that never happen? Or watch as Martin Brundle tests the 2007 Spiker. Like, it just doesn't happen. And these cars are still out there.
Yeah. I'd quite like to see There's a team, AGS. They've still got all of their cars going around in, I'm going to say Manicourt. Why am I changing my wing again?
On my screen, you have two medium tyres and two soft compound tyres.
Oh. Well,
And you still do as you drive away. Oh, now they've stopped flashing yellow, and now you have all softs. Just to reassure you.
Well, that's fucked me right over. 17th, because I had to sit in the pits. I've got to overtake everyone again.
This game is very cruel. This game is very, very cruel, as we have learnt today. Kevin Magnussen's out, at least, so I'm not the only clown who failed to finish. Now, there were some other questions I got asked by viewers of my Grand Prix World playthrough.
Oh, yeah.
For the podcast. And I'd like to take a moment to dig some of them up. Now, so the first one is from Timo. Thank you for watching, Timo. And he was asking if you or I would have predicted McLaren's season this year, given that they had two new drivers.
No. I predicted an upward trend because there was no Alonso. I don't think I'd have predicted it going so well, and I'm so glad to be proven wrong.
Yeah, I can't really add much more to that, to be honest. I mean, I did also expect them to take a step forward. What I didn't expect was them to take such a massive step forward and be in this awkward situation now where they're fighting with their engine supplier for fourth in the constructors. And to be honest with you, there's a part of me that thought McLaren and Renault could never have a successful partnership together because it's too weird.
Yeah. It's not historic.
No. And it's kind of embarrassing for a supercar manufacturer to have to go to the people who make the Renault Clio and ask, can I have your engine, please? But it has given us some gifts as well, aside from the form. Like, let's not forget Fernando Alonso's indignation that Honda wouldn't supply him with an engine for Indy.
Yeah.
That cracked me up no end.
The shows don't burn your bridges.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, and Honda and Renault are two very well-established engine companies that will come back eventually. So, other questions, bear with me, I've got to drink some more bubbles.
Chin chin.
Why, thank you, sir. Okay. So, next up, what is the most unlikely driver market move that we've seen since we were watching Formula 1? And the person who asked this must be very young, because so I'm going to eliminate the obvious one, which is Damon Hill moving to Arrows for 1997. Because I don't think I can ever think of a time that a reigning world champion has moved down the grid so far.
No, you'd have to go right the way back to the 80s.
Oh, mate, that's what I did. So, accepting that, weirdest driver moves. There's quite a few here, actually. I was always surprised that Jos Verstappen managed to be dropped from Benetton and end up spending the rest of his career at fairly middling or back of the grid teams. And he's a driver, actually, that every team he moved to seemed to be progressively worse. With the exception of Stewart, because he moved to Stewart at a time that they were doing okay. But if you recall, he started at Benetton when they were entering championship contending form. Mm-hmm. And then from there he went to Tyrrell, who... Well, the 97 Tyrrell wasn't the worst they ever made, but it was in the same...
He went for... Done a few in between then, didn't he?
Oh, he went to Footwork, didn't he, for a bit?
Footwork 96, Simtech 95.
Yeah, so that's quite an obvious downhill trajectory. Then
Yes.
then Tyrrell, then he was out of the sport. Then he came back.
Stuart.
Yeah, he came back first with Stewart, and then was it Minardi then Arrows or Arrows then Minardi?
Arrows then Minardi.
Yeah.
Because there was a couple of years between them, and because he ended up being ousted by. Oh God, this looks horrific. Hang on. But he went to go and do the Honda project, didn't he? So this was this is what I learnt from the Beyond the Grid with Yoss that came out this week, actually, which was quite interesting because he sounds really, really bored when you talk about his career, but he's like mega wanky when it talks over Max and very excitable.
Well, he's living vicariously through his son, isn't he?
He is. And Tom Clarkson is basically trying to peddle the theory that all of his career was basically gearing up for Max's. And I was like, no, because Max didn't exist for the first half of that career. So, no. The big thing, though, was that... so he joined the Honda project in 1999 because they were supposed to be on the grid in 2000 with a new car, and he'd been promised the race seat. And the Honda project was actually very, very good. And he was basically they were saying, look, were the times like staged because they were ridiculously fast? And he's like, no, we weren't running low fuel, we weren't doing anything, we was genuinely that quick. And the first thing that made me think of was, God, doesn't history repeat itself? 2008, 2009. But essentially, it was, you twat.
Well, I didn't see anything.
Another wing. I grazed the wall.
Your wing is intact on my screen. Completely.
It's yellow.
Oh.
What was I going to say? But essentially, the Honda project fell apart when Harvey Postlethwaite was taken ill and
died.
I think he died then. Yeah.
He died 2001.
Yeah. So yeah, it kind of all fell apart, and that's why he was out of the sport for a bit, and came back with Minardi, but wasn't really, heart wasn't in it, and then left for good, kind of thing. So yeah, that is a downward trajectory, definitely.
See, that's something I don't understand, right? Why that Honda project fell apart. And I'm glad we've got onto this, actually. Because you and long-time viewers will know, I'm a huge Harvey Postlethwaite fan. I think he's one of those names in F1 that's continually been overlooked, and I'm not sure why, because he's been involved in some belting cars. And I understand, like, his death leaving a big hole to fill, but the work had already been done.
Yeah.
To a large extent. And why you would take a car that was that promising and then go, actually, we'll not bother. And I do wonder if part of that was maybe being scared by, seeing how it's gone with other new entrants.
Yeah.
I'm sure for many years after, BAR caused its fair share of nightmares. Although, I don't really... Actually, that was a question that did come up, actually. It's kind of weird that we boomerang to another question. Because someone did ask me, do we consider the BAR project to have ultimately been a failure?
No.
No.
But there's several reasons as to why I would say that. So, the first one is... I couldn't see where the mark on boards were, sorry. The first one, or reason why I'd say that, is because look at what it now is today.
Yeah.
So if you trace back the DNA of everything, that is now a championship winning team, and obviously everything that kind of comes from that kind of filters down. I would say that they are the template of how not to do your PR entering your first season of Formula One.
Yeah.
And also how to, and this is more from a Villeneuve perspective than anything else, how to not mix business and pleasure at a top tier level of sport. You can do that when you're trying to run a business and you're doing mates rates and stuff like that. mates rates don't work on a global motorsport stage, and we're seeing time and time again how cruel top tier of sport is for not being a platform for being nice and gentle. And I think that's where they fell down. But ultimately, no, they were a decent midfield team.
My memories of BAR are very mixed. At the time, I had sort of a love-hate for Jacques Villeneuve, because I felt he was the reason that Damon Hill got kicked out of Williams. So I disliked him for that, but I found him a very excited driver. And back then, I had a real issue with Ferrari. I can't quite remember why, but even before like the Schumacher era, quote unquote, began, and he was dominating everything, I was bored by the Schumacher-Ferrari combo. But it was odd for me that he would make the move he did to BAR. But I do struggle to think of a new entrant, quote unquote, that got so much right but still ended up flopping.
Because in that beginning year, they didn't score a point, and they was the only team not to. And with the budget of, what was it, 300 million, if I remember?
Yeah.
Or quoting Toyota, I can't remember. Ridiculous.
I don't know if, I think you were quoting Toyota actually, but they still had a vast budget, huge budget. And they poached some of the best staff from up and down the paddock. They had a world champion driving the lead car and a very promising youngster who eventually amounted to nothing, partnering him, and just didn't deliver. And actually, do you know, we've done it again, because as I'm looking on my phone, a question I got was, do we think Jacques Villeneuve was overrated? And again, that's a kind of question of perspective, right? Because he came to F1 after being pretty dominant in IndyCar, right?
Yeah. And
he didn't he win the Indy 500 in '95?
I can't remember if he did or not.
Well, anyway, whatever the case may be, he did really well in IndyCar.
Won the series.
Yeah. And then he came to F1 and almost won the championship in his first year. Well, made a good crack at it. Won it in his second year. But then his career took I guess we'll call it a Jos Verstappen trajectory. I mean, I always forget he drove for Renault. Because that's one of those
races.
That's one of those things that doesn't sound like it's true. And it's a team and driver mix that doesn't match somehow.
No.
It's the same way I block out Jenson Button's stint at Benetton.
Because of how unremarkable it was for most of it.
I think it's also because he was a Williams driver, and like Williams drivers going to Benetton or Benetton drivers going to Williams, it's just something that should never happen.
Yes.
And so I kind of block out one side of it. I've got like a selective blindness. But it is an interesting question, right? Because I don't know what machinery he was in IndyCar, whether it was the dominant team. But obviously we know how good the Williams was. Do you remember any particular standout performances from him after his stint at Williams? Because he's kind of been forgettable for me.
I think so. I think he drove exceptionally well in 1999 for BAR because he was legs and like way ahead of Ricardo Zonta, that it was embarrassing. I know Zonta didn't exactly amount to like groundbreaking. Is Lando Norris going to win this race? I know there's someone else ahead.
No, Perez. Sergio Perez is going to win this race. That's a perfectly normal English language sentence.
Silence indeed. No, there was some good standout stuff. And I would say after It's because they're going really slow.
They are, aren't they? But they haven't pitted again, have they?
No, they haven't.
They've gone long.
Gone out there on mediums. Oh, this is going to really drop me off. Off the top of my head, no, I can't think of anything dramatic from Villeneuve. I think, didn't he get a podium for BAR at one point? Or am I just thinking, is it... I think he got one for Williams in 98, and that was about it.
Yeah, because I remember him, he underdrove the BMW Sauber quite badly, didn't he?
In 2005, he was trounced by Massa. Then he got it together in 06. But it was too late because they went for Kubica.
And I'm glad they did, to be honest. Although I still think we got the best of Kubica when he was at Renault.
Absolutely.
There's some laps he did at Monaco that I will remember to the day I die in qualifying. But it's interesting, isn't it, how time changes perspectives and stuff. Because, you know, I'd genuinely forgotten how good Massa was until he had that great 2014.
Yeah, because you see him in the role that he's cast and playing at that specific team at that time. And then you go back and you see like the early 2000s when he was a rough diamond at Sauber and then benched, coming back doing some great stuff up against Fisichella in 04 and then trashing Villeneuve in 05. Does superbly well in his debut once he calmed down at Ferrari, settled in nicely. 08 could have / should have maybe won that championship. And then
I'm in the should have camp on that.
I am should have as well. That Hungary engine blow up. But yeah, there's lots of interesting ones. Apologies for diving back on a topic. It's popped into my brain. I think I said earlier that it was because Harvey Postlethwaite died that Honda dropped the project. What Jos Verstappen was saying was that Honda dropped the project, and it was that day essentially that Harvey Postlethwaite then became ill and then died.
Oh, damn you, Honda.
Yeah. And I don't know if he kind of like meant it like that, but he was literally saying like he looked ill that evening and went to his trailer, and that was the last I saw of him.
That's sad. That puts a whole sad spin on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay, last question that's come in. Drivers that we consider should have... Hold on, let me read that in English. Drivers who we consider as champions who never actually lifted the title. Drivers who could have done, basically, is what they're saying in a 3-paragraph question that I'm not going to read out in full. I want to throw one name into the ring straight away.
Okay.
That people may not agree with, but Olivier Panis.
Yes.
Because I think he showed that if he'd been in the right car at the right time, he could have done it. I mean, he took it to Villeneuve for a while in a Prost. I would have liked to have seen either Prost moving an upward trajectory, or for Panis to have had a move up the grid to see if that suspicion I've always held about him, and this gets back to the legacy again, because maybe he would have fluffed it, but never knowing kind of invites a generous interpretation.
Yeah.
I would also say at one point I pegged Romain Grosjean as a potential world champion because of his performances at Lotus, but we've since learnt that shows what happens when things go the other way, when you're not given the chance to be charitable. Who else, though? In terms of, I mean, it's underwhelming drivers is a lot easier because, you know, Jan Magnussen immediately leaps to mind.
Yes, there's a lot of hype over now.
Mark Webber, I think, is one. I think he was capable of being a world champion, but...
Yes, but maybe not at the same time as when Vettel was being a world champion. I think he fluffed it at the wrong point.
Mm-hmm.
also. I was going to say, what would say your opinion on the swerve in Irvin? Because he was a nearly, but I think it's once you've removed the once in a generations out the way.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Interesting question.
Although, to be honest, let's say Schumacher never went to Ferrari. I mean, it's very easy to, and probably accurate to argue, they wouldn't have developed into such a dominant force.
Yeah.
But setting that aside for a minute, same car that they had, just no Schumacher, could Irvine have been a world champion? Yes. Yeah, I have no qualms at all about saying that. I think he could have been and probably would have been. But actually, I kind of struggle because in the end, justice always seems to get done. You know, I would have said Nico Rosberg if it wasn't for the fact he did win a title.
Yeah.
Jenson Button won a title, and he was very deserving one. Massa, for sure, I think is a guy who would have been a deserving world champion.
Yeah.
But there's not many other names that leap to mind.
I'd throw out a few left field ones now. Heinz Howard Frentzen in 1999.
1999. Jordan.
Pre-97.
Yeah. 1999. Heinz Howard Frentzen removed from Jordan and put in a Ferrari. Yes.
Yeah, that would have bossed it all. I would also throw out, just because I am a fan of the man, Pierluigi Martini as the biggest underdog ever. Stefan Bella, if we're going back to the 80s.
Oh yeah, actually.
As the talent that never had the chance to do so. But yeah, from my eras of watching, they're kind of ones that spring out. Perhaps I was going to say Maurizio Gugino or someone like that, but then he didn't really exactly win everything in IndyCar either, so I'm going to shut up.
I would venture, I think I'm getting my year right, 2009 Giancarlo Fisichella.
Oh, with the Force India when it was front rowing.
Yeah. I mean, I know he got poached by Ferrari and then kind of flopped, but I think if he'd been in a car that he was comfortable with, that had the same potential, I think he showed there. I mean, to be fair, Fisichella's had some good runs in his career. He's just not always necessarily been consistent, but I think with the wind blowing in the right direction, he could have been able to do it. And as for drivers who I would like to have seen more of, drivers I think who could have gone on to deliver more than they ultimately did for whatever reason, Kamui Kobayashi.
Yes.
Outside one here, but David Brabham.
Yeah, because he done quite well with his namesake. He drove for his namesake team, and then I think he done a very respectable job in the Syntec.
Yeah, he did, and I think he could have done with a few more years for us to see what he was truly capable of. Jaime Alguersuari.
Yes.
I thought he was the promising one out of that pairing, and had to go off to be a Balearic DJ. Who else do I think dropped out unjustly? I think you can make an argument Timo Glock could have spent a few more years in the midfield.
Punching out in the Virgin quite happily.
And then going back a little bit further, I always think Damon Hill's F1 career was far too short for his talent.
Yes, but he'd clearly lost it, I think, in 99. And but only 6 years, essentially. Very, very short for an F1 champion to come in peak, flop out again.
Yeah, but he had a strong 98 in the Jordan.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And actually, he did a lot better than people remember in the Arrows in 97, to be fair.
Definitely.
Who was it? There was a guy who He drove for Lotus, proper Lotus. What was his name? Martin Donnelly. That's the one. Martin Donnelly.
Ah, yes. Then he had that massive crash at Jerez, didn't he?
He had a massive crash, and I don't think he came back from that, did he?
No. I think he'd done some British touring car, and that was it. But I might have it back to front. I'm thinking of Julian Bailey. Sorry, who then replaced him?
Yeah, that's right. I would have liked to have seen more of Martin Donnelly because I think he needed more time to show what he was truly capable of. And who was the Italian touring car guy?
Gabriele Tarquini.
Yes. But then again, I don't know if that would have worked out. Nicola Larini's a name that keeps coming to mind as well, but I don't think he really justified being in F1 towards the end, right?
Oh, no. Well, so... I would champion... actually, so... Going back to people who I think could have been a champion, I think Gabriele Tarquini could have been, because he used to boss those AGSs and Fondmetals and all of those cars that he was given at the back. Went on to absolutely dominate stuff, and he's still winning championships now, and he's in his 50s.
Yeah, actually, that's a very strong argument if ever there was one.
Yeah. I think Nicola Larini deserved more than the podium that he got at Imola. I think he was awkwardly placed in the Sauber in '97, alongside my next call out, which would have been Gianni Morbidelli, who I was a big fan of. He done some good stuff for Arrows and Footwork, and Minardi, and was a Ferrari tester. Other people I'd like to have seen: Luca Badoer. I know. I was talking about him. Vincenzo Sospiri.
Oh, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. With his big chunky Lola.
Stefan Serrazan.
Yeah, actually, Serrazan's a name that I think he was around F1 and he was testing a lot, but he seemed quite promising. But he never got his shot properly. I don't feel. I know he did do a season or two, but I don't think we really got to see the best of him.
We only got the one race, didn't he? Replacing Badoer in '99 Brazil, and that's when he crashed and he done like the 11 spins coming out of the final turn. Good fun. But he was promised to come back for a proper drive, and it never happened. One of many things. Because I've read an interview of him because he went off to do Formula E, didn't he? And he was basically told by Flavio Briatore that he would be promised a seat at either Benetton or Minardi for 2000, so he purposely didn't sign. No, sorry, I've got it wrong. Let me say that again. He was promised a drive at Prost for 2000, so he didn't sign for Minardi when they offered him the contract for 2000, and then Prost went, "No, mate, I'm going with Nick Heidfeld," and left him without a drive for 2000.
Which is not something you hear very often.
No. But again, that proves back to your point at the beginning, showing that this podcast is circular and amazing.
Yeah.
Once you get out of Formula One, it's a fucking faff to get back in, and when you do, it's a struggle.
It really is. Well, mate, congratulations on a very strong drive. It was very impressive to see you cutting your way through the field. This is the biggest gap in points we've had ever.
Wow.
Ever. You are
not last, I'm sure.
No, I'm P7 in the championship, 25 points. You are P1 on 64, so we're separated by a fairly monumental amount, but it's still all to play for. And next up, we are in Spain, so hopefully everyone will join us for that. In the meantime, everyone take care of yourselves, and especially you, mate. Have a good one.
You too, mate. And have a great birthday. Everyone have a drink for him.
Cheers. Bye-bye.